Hey y'all, hope you're doing well. My name is Dave. I'm a senior in the class of 2021 at Walter Johnson High School in North Bethesda, Maryland. And today I'm going to be talking to you about Maryland's executive branch, especially pertaining to like the role of the governor. And there'll be another video about a different aspect of the executive branch called the Board of Public Works, just behind this one. So what's a governor? So the governor he's our chief executive officer. He has the full executive power of the state vested in them. They serve as the commander-in-chief of state forces, which is going to be like the Maryland National Guard and the Maryland Defense Force, which is like our volunteer service. We don't really have a military because nobody in the country really has a military outside of the federal government. And the governor cannot take command in person of our troops without the consent of the legislature, which is weird, which is a nice check on their power. So they get to make appointments, which obviously have to be confirmed by the Senate. They can pass or veto laws from the legislature. They have the power to convene the legislature. They get to submit their budget proposals to the General Assembly, which, again, there's another video on the budget. And ultimately, they ensure that all laws are faithfully executed. That is their number one role. So what's the balance of power? So Maryland has a very strong executive branch. So we have another check on the power of the legislature called our Board of Public Works that I'll get into in a minute, which is unique to Maryland. Sorry, not get into it in a minute. I'll get into it in a different video. And in our budget process currently, the governor gets to make the bills, and then the legislature can't add money or change and move money around. The legislature only gets to remove money from the bills. So it's very strong power tilted in favor of the executive. There are a couple of things that counteract this. We have a 3/5 supermajority for most things, which includes overturning vetoes, which is rare because usually a supermajority means 2/3. And in 2020, we voted yes on ballot question A, which will go into effect in 2024, which is going to change the restrictions on the legislature's ability to deal with the budget, which, again, I'll get more to in the budget video. So to run for office, so the governor serves a 4-year term. You can only run 2 consecutive terms. So you get 8 years, and then you have to take a term off before you can come back and run again. They run on the same ticket with the lieutenant governor, sort of the way the president runs with the vice president, which is not common. Most states don't do that. Most states, they're separate elections. So we get elected in even-numbered years without a presidential election, so 2022, 2026. We call this gubernatorial election years. Gubernatorial comes from the word governor. If there's a tie, which will not happen, the House of Delegates would get to settle it. We would never have a tie because it'd have to be the exact same number of votes for each candidate because we don't have an electoral college or anything. So to run for governor, you have to be at least 30 years old. You have to be a resident and a registered voter of Maryland for the 5 years before the election. So for legislation, if they come to the governor during session being the General Assembly's 90 days from January to March, they get to meet. The governor only gets 6 days to act on them. But usually bills aren't passed really until the end of session. So they have to make it to the governor's desk within 20 days of the end of session. And once they're given, after session, the governor gets 30 days to act on them. So they can pass them, they can veto them. Vetoes can be overridden with 3/5 majority in each chamber, which currently the Democrats hold. Budget bills and constitutional amendments cannot be vetoed. But other spending bills, the governor could do a line item veto, so cutting one specific thing out of a monetary appropriations bill. So the governor gets to appoint all civil and military officers of the state. Civil officers have to be confirmed by the Senate. They have to present it within the first 40 days of session unless the vacancy appears later during the session. And if an appointment is rejected, they cannot be renominated during that session, and they cannot be appointed during recess. Recess is obviously the rest of the year from April through December, when the legislature isn't in session and the governor is kind of running unchecked and can kind of do what they want. And so they get to make recess appointments, which are going to last until the end of the next legislative session. But if they have been voted down, and so their term is expiring, they don't get to run for a new term. They don't get to appoint anybody. We call this the lame duck period. This could be overridden in a state of emergency, but generally it won't be. A couple other powers. The governor can convene the legislature if there's extraordinary circumstances. This could even happen somewhere other than a state capital in Annapolis if we need, if it's unsafe to meet in Annapolis, which is very unlikely. They examine the treasurer and the comptroller semi-annually under oath. They can grant reprieves and pardons for all people. So like, get rid of their criminal record. They can't do this for like a case of impeachment. They can reorganize the executive branch through an executive order. But if either chamber votes that they can't do that, then it gets overturned. And they can appoint replacements to the General Assembly seats as well as to Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and Comptroller. Okay, so if there's a vacancy, so either the Lieutenant Governor or the Governor could decide that the other one of the two is unfit to perform the duties of their office, which is for reason of physical or mental disability. Or either could also voluntarily write down, hey, I'm not safe to be in office. And so if this happens, we call a joint session of the General Assembly. So both chambers meet together. You need a 3/5 majority of this joint session. So it's not 3/5 in each house. It's 3/5 of the total people. Then we send this resolution to the Court of Appeals, which is our Supreme Court. They could either decide to reject it. They could approve it temporarily. They could approve it permanently. And if there's any other conflicts that come up, it's their responsibility to settle it. And then, so the governor gets to appoint replacements. The lieutenant governor is removed. If the governor is removed, the lieutenant governor goes up to governor and then appoints their replacement. The other scenario for somebody leaving office is the General Assembly could impeach either the governor or lieutenant governor. There's not like a list in the Constitution of what could get you impeached. But generally it's, abuse of power and doing a poor job and, refusal to act, just not being a proper governor. The House of Delegates is going to investigate, fraud claims, qualification status, all these things, and they get to vote. They vote by majority to impeach, and the Senate will try them, and they can convict and remove with a 2/3 majority in the Senate, which is the same as the U.S. Congress. So the line of succession. So lieutenant governor obviously follows the governor, and they get to appoint a new lieutenant governor to follow them, which obviously all appointments are confirmed by the Senate. If there is no governor or lieutenant governor, then the president of the Senate will come up and act as the governor temporarily. But the General Assembly will still convene to appoint to elect a new governor in a joint session, who will then appoint a lieutenant. And while the Senate president is acting as governor, then the Senate elects a new acting president, but the acting governor is still the Senate president. They're just not acting as Senate president. And if the presidency if the president of the Senate also happens to be vacant during this time, then the Senate convenes to fill that seat. So we have a very built up line of succession here. So other roles in the executive branch. So we have our lieutenant governor, obviously, who's elected on the ticket with the governor, like a vice president, which I said is rare. They don't get to do that much. So in most states, the lieutenant governor is presiding over the legislature, which they can't do here. They don't have any prescribed duties in the Constitution. They only have what the governor delegates to them. And they end up they have to meet the same qualifications to be elected. So the residency and the 30 years old. Then we have our attorney general, who's our chief legal officer, who takes on general charge, supervision, and direction of the state's legal business. And they're going to represent the state every time we go to court. So if somebody sues the state, they're going to come represent us. They get elected statewide every 4 years. They don't have any term limits, but they have to be a citizen and qualified voter of Maryland, and they have to have resided in and practiced law in the state for the past 10 years, which is a pretty hard bar to meet. That's not easy. And then there's an attorney for the state, which is elected every 4 years in each county, which kind of functions as our that's like an attorney general in the counties. They have to be in the Maryland bar, so allowed to practice law just like the attorney general, and they have to have lived here for 2 years. Then we have the comptroller, which is our chief financial officer. So they're officially, what their job is to exercise general superintendence of the fiscal affairs of the state. And basically this means they're responsible for taxes. They countersign all of our checks that we're spending. They make debt transparent. And they're our chief accountant. And so they're keeping track of the money and assuring it's getting spent properly. They get elected statewide for 4-year terms in the same year as we elect the governor. They don't have any other qualifications except, you have to be 18, qualified voter. But otherwise, as soon as you're 18, you have to run, which is not even true for House of Delegates or Senate or any other race. And then the treasurer is responsible for handling all state money. So they aren't spending the money and auditing the money and ensuring that in the same way as the comptroller, but they actually have the money. They're keeping track of the money. They invest the money. They manage the money. They make sure we're, transparent with the money. They provide financial reports. I'll go into more detail on these two roles in the Board of Public Works video. And the treasurer is appointed on a joint, or elected rather, on a joint ballot from both chambers of the General Assembly every 4 years. Again, no listed requirements. Got to be 18 again. No term limits either. And then we have a Board of Public Works, which, again, there's a video on this. But it's unique to Maryland. It's the governor, the comptroller, and the treasurer, and they sit and they have to pass most of our spending projects, which is another check on the legislature, another way that our executive branch is very powerful. So thanks for watching. Here's another list of the sources you can look at. You can send me an email, davetalkslocalpolitics@gmail.com, and I'll try to answer your questions. I hope everything was clear to you. And yeah, keep on going down this playlist if you want to see more videos on Maryland and Montgomery County governments, and have a great day.